Everyone knows Dolly's famous song, Coat of Many Colors. But when this fan shared her own coat story, Dolly revealed the heartbreaking truth about her mother that she's never told before. The Tonight Show studio was alive with its signature Tuesday evening energy in Manhattan. The familiar blue and gold lighting created that warm, electric atmosphere that had made the show a late-night institution for decades. Dolly Parton sat across from Jimmy Fallon, both engaged in what appeared to be a typical celebrity interview about her enduring musical legacy and her latest philanthropic endeavors. The Roots had just finished their smooth musical transition, and the cameras were rolling hot. Jimmy's iconic curved desk gleamed under the professional studio lights, while the New York City skyline sparkled through the backdrop windows like a constellation of dreams and timeless melodies. Dolly looked every inch the beloved icon she had become. At 78, she still possessed that radiant smile and sparkling personality that had captivated the world for over 6 decades, though now seasoned with the wisdom and grace that came from a lifetime of touching hearts through music. Dressed in a shimmering gold jacket that caught the studio lights, her platinum blonde hair styled in her signature voluminous fashion, she radiated the same warmth and authenticity that had made her a global treasure. "So Dolly," Jimmy said, his animated gestures punctuating every word, "you've been inspiring people for over 60 years. Your music, Dollywood, your literacy program, you've touched so many lives. What keeps you going at 78? Dolly's eyes twinkled with that characteristic blend of humor and sincerity. "Well, honey, I figure the good Lord ain't done with me yet. As long as I can sing, as long as I can help folks, I'm gonna keep on keeping on. Music has been my gift, and I believe gifts are meant to be shared." The audience was clearly enchanted by her warmth and down-home wisdom. Several older fans in the front rows, nodding along with obvious affection and admiration. "And speaking of sharing gifts," Jimmy continued, "let's talk about Coat of Many Colors. That song has meant so much to so many people over the years. It's such a beautiful story about your mother's love and making something beautiful out of nothing." Dolly's expression became more tender, more reflective. "Oh, that song. That's my heart on a platter, Jimmy. Mama made me that coat out of scraps and rags, and I thought it was the most beautiful thing in the world. She told me about Joseph's coat of many colors from the Bible, made me feel like I was wrapped in love itself." The conversation was flowing naturally, touching on her childhood in the Smoky Mountains, her family's poverty, and how those early experiences had shaped her music and her generous spirit. The studio audience was completely engaged, hanging on every word from one of country music's most beloved figures. "What's amazing," Jimmy said, warmly, "is how you took those difficult circumstances and turned them into something that brings hope to millions of people. That's real strength." Dolly smiled, though there was something deeper in her eyes now, something that spoke of memories both precious and painful. "Well, sugar, sometimes what looks like hardship is really just love wearing work clothes. Mama always said we were rich in the things that mattered." It was in this moment of reflection about family and the transformative power of love that a voice from the audience cut through the studio atmosphere with the raw emotion and recognition of someone who had lived a parallel story. "Miss Dolly?" Both Dolly and Jimmy turned toward the sound. In the 5th row, center section, an older woman in her 70s was standing among the seated audience members. She had silver hair and wore a simple floral dress, clutching what appeared to be an old photograph in her trembling hands. Her eyes held both deep gratitude and the weight of a lifetime of struggles overcome through love. "Yes, sweetheart," Dolly responded immediately, her voice carrying the maternal warmth that had made her beloved across generations. "What's your name, honey?" "My name is Margaret," the woman replied, her voice steady despite the emotion clearly building. "Margaret Thompson from Tennessee, just like you." "Margaret from Tennessee," Dolly repeated with a delighted smile. "Well, ain't that nice? We're practically neighbors. What did you want to share, darling?" Margaret took a visible breath, and suddenly the energy in the studio shifted. The light-hearted conversation about success and inspiration was about to become something much more personal, much more profound. "I wanted to tell you about my coat," Margaret began, her voice gaining strength with each word. "My mama made me one too, back in 1953. We were so poor after Daddy died that we didn't have money for store-bought clothes. The studio fell silent. This wasn't just a fan sharing a memory. This was someone connecting a life experience to the heart of Dolly's most personal song. Mama took old feed sacks and scraps from the church sewing circle, Margaret continued, tears beginning to form in her eyes. She sat up nights by kerosene light, stitching together pieces of different colors and patterns. I was so embarrassed to wear it to school. Dolly's expression immediately became more attentive, more compassionate, clearly understanding that this story was about to touch something deeply meaningful. The other children laughed at me, Margaret said, her voice beginning to break, called it ugly, called me poor white trash. I came home crying, told Mama I never wanted to wear it again. And you know what she did? The weight of the memory seemed to settle over the studio, like a gentle hush. Everyone present could sense they were about to hear something that transcended entertainment. She sat me down and told me the exact same story your mama told you, about Joseph's coat, about how God makes beautiful things out of broken pieces. She said every patch was sewn with love, and that made it more valuable than anything we could buy in a store. Dolly was now leaning forward in her chair, clearly moved by the parallel between their experiences. But here's what I want to tell you, Miss Dolly, Margaret continued, her voice growing stronger with conviction. 20 years later, when your song came on the radio for the first time, I was in my kitchen doing dishes, and I just started sobbing. Because for the first time in my life, I heard someone singing my story. Someone who understood what it was like to be poor but rich in love. The silence that followed was profound. This wasn't just about shared poverty or childhood embarrassment. This was about the power of music to validate experiences and heal old wounds. I called my mama that very day, Margaret said, now crying freely. I was 35 years old, and I called to thank her for that coat, to tell her I finally understood what she was trying to teach me. And Miss Dolly, she cried too, because she said she'd been waiting her whole life for me to see it. Dolly's own eyes were now filled with tears, though she maintained her composure with the grace of someone accustomed to carrying others' emotions. Your song gave me the words to apologize to my mama for being ashamed, Margaret concluded. It helped me understand that love doesn't always come wrapped in pretty packages, but it's still love. Without hesitation, without consulting producers or following any protocol, Dolly Parton stood up from her chair and walked directly into the audience toward Margaret. "Oh, honey," Dolly said as she reached Margaret's row, "come here to me." Margaret was helped out of her seat by surrounding audience members, and Dolly embraced her warmly, both women crying openly as the studio audience watched this moment of profound connection unfold. "You know what, Margaret?" Dolly said, still holding the woman's hands. "Your mama and my mama, they knew something the rest of the world was too busy to notice." She turned to address both Margaret and the cameras, her voice now carrying a weight of emotion and wisdom earned through decades of reflection. They knew that love isn't about having enough money to buy the fanciest things. It's about taking whatever you have and making it beautiful because you care about someone. The studio was completely silent except for the soft sounds of people being moved to tears by this unexpected moment of truth and healing. "But I want to tell you something I've never said publicly," Dolly continued, her voice becoming more intimate. "That coat my mama made me, I wasn't just embarrassed about it because the other kids laughed. I was embarrassed because I could see how hard Mama was working to make it, how her fingers bled from pushing that needle through thick fabric, how she cried when she thought nobody was looking." The audience gasped slightly. This was clearly a deeper, more painful layer of the beloved song's story. "I was just a little girl, but I knew Mama was sacrificing more than cloth to make that coat. She was pouring her heart into every stitch, trying to make something beautiful out of our poverty. And it broke my heart that she felt like she had to." Margaret nodded knowingly, clearly understanding this complex mixture of gratitude and heartbreak. Years later, when I wrote that song, it wasn't just about being proud of that coat. It was about finally understanding the love behind it. About realizing that Mama wasn't just making me clothes, she was teaching me that you can take life's scraps and create something beautiful if you put enough love into it. Dolly reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small, worn piece of fabric. "This is a piece of that original coat," she said, showing it to Margaret and the cameras. "I've carried it with me for 40 years, not because it was pretty, but because it reminds me that the most precious things in life often come wrapped in humility." She pressed the small fabric piece into Margaret's hands. "I want you to have this, Margaret, Because you understood what your mama was trying to teach you, just like I finally understood what mine was teaching me." The studio erupted in applause, but it wasn't the typical television applause. It was the kind of emotional response that comes from witnessing something authentic and healing. Jimmy, his own eyes wet with tears, addressed both women. This is why music matters. This is why stories matter, because they help us understand that we're not alone in our experiences. But Dolly wasn't finished. She began removing her shimmering gold jacket. "Margaret," she said, "this jacket cost more than my family made in a year when I was growing up. But you know what? It doesn't mean a thing compared to that coat your mama made you." She draped her expensive jacket around Margaret's shoulders. "Tonight, you wear this. But I want you to remember that the most beautiful thing you ever wore was sewn with your mama's love. That's something money can't buy." Margaret, now wearing Dolly's golden jacket, looked transformed, not by the expensive garment, but by the recognition and validation she had received. The show ended differently that night. No standard closing segment. Just Dolly and Jimmy sitting with Margaret as the credits rolled. Three people connected by the understanding that love is often found in the simplest, most overlooked gestures. When the episode aired 2 weeks later, it became one of the most watched and shared Tonight Show segments in the show's history. The hashtag, "Your Coat of Many Colors," trended globally as millions of viewers shared their own stories of love disguised as sacrifice. Margaret became an unexpected advocate for recognizing the hidden acts of love in everyday life, speaking at community events about the importance of seeing beyond surface. Appearances to the heart behind the gesture. Dolly never spoke publicly about why that moment meant so much to her, but those close to her noticed something different in how she talked about her mother from that night forward, with even deeper reverence for the woman who taught her that love creates beauty from brokenness. And every time Dolly performed Coat of Many Colors after that night, she thought about Margaret Thompson and all the other children whose mothers had sewn love into scraps, teaching them that the most valuable things in life don't come from stores. They come from hearts willing to create beauty out of whatever they have to work with. The night that changed everything wasn't about fame or success or even music. It was about two women understanding that their mothers had been angels in disguise, teaching them that love doesn't need expensive materials to create something beautiful. Sometimes, the most precious gifts come wrapped in humility, stitched together with prayers, and delivered through hands willing to work late into the night. Margaret Thompson returned to Tennessee carrying more than Dolly's jacket. She carried the validation that her mother's love had been seen, recognized, and honored. And Dolly Parton, who had spent decades singing about that coat, finally understood that her song had become a bridge connecting mothers and daughters across generations, reminding them that love always finds a way to make something beautiful out of whatever materials it has to work with.